One of the viewers on the channel, CatHD, requested that we do a pixel art style study on Breath of Fire 4. This is an isometric game released by Capcom back in 2000. It's got some of the raddest pixel art I've ever seen. It's just a real shame I missed out on it back in the day. But hey, at least we're getting to explore the graphics now. CatHD is working on a game inspired by this style, but it might be a little bit cyberpunk and it might have a little bit of fishing. So my goal in this video was to learn Breath of Fire 4 style so I could design a Cyberpunk Fisherman. Let's do it. Hey guys, I'm Andrew Robinson of Robinson Pixels. Hold your breath, cause we're on fire for Breath of Fire 4. Pew! First thing I wanted to do before I really got started was to just kind of look at some of the playable characters and see what we're even working with. Basically, we're working with blue-haired guy, Dogman, and Angel? I don't know what these characters are, but what this tells me is that really anything goes in this game, which is good. So let's go ahead and take a closer look. Ryu himself is 47 pixels tall. That's a pretty good size for a sprite. Compare that to this character from Pokemon, because I was studying them not too long ago. He's only 16 pixels tall. But turns out if you're really examining these sprites, which I'm doing, then you can see the similarities between them. Specifically, obviously right here on their heads. The eyeballs are only 2 pixels high, they're 2 pixels apart. The ears are almost the exact same shape on both of these characters, so they've got fully swappable heads, kinda. So my advice, if you want to learn complex, hardcore stuff, is to start with simple stuff, and that will give you the skills that you need to go further. All right, let's dive in. First thing I do when I'm learning a style before I'm creating new things is just mess around with the sprites. Kind of recoloring him, taking out his little bracelets, changing up his boot. I didn't even finish it before I moved on to the next thing, which was to make something new. I gave Ryu a fish, or a dolphin, maybe? I don't even really know what I was drawing. Now, with these sprites completed, I was able to understand a little bit better the general vibe of the game. There's not a lot of contrast between the colors, and there's also, of course, fairly realistic proportions with these characters. And of course, you'll notice I didn't even finish shading his boots down there, because that wasn't as important to me as just kind of getting it. Now, before I move on to designing my own character, I want to draw an existing one, and that'll help me kind of learn the style a little bit better without the pressure of having to know exactly what I'm trying to come up with. What I'm gonna do is draw a famous fisherman. Perhaps the most famous fisherman from all of video games. Famous fisherman, famous fisherman, famous fisherman. First up, I'm just sketching in the character's proportions. I like to do that so I know what the character's gonna look like. And now right here, that's the crotch line, as I have so delicately labeled it. How long your torso is and how long the legs are really based on that line. For the Breath of Fire 4 style, the shoulders to crotch is the same length as the crotch to the toes, right? Sorry, I keep saying crotch. I don't want to just say legs, because legs go up, you know, like your butt's attached to your legs, right? So this is what we're working with, guys. I am now inking in that silhouette. I don't always do it that way, but I feel like it works well enough for this character. Speaking of this character, I think you might know kinda sorta who it is by this point. It's Lakitu. Hey, look at that, you're a little Lakitu in here. The next character will be more Breath of Fiery, but once I got it in my head, you know, I cannot help myself when I get a thought, I have to do the thing. So, we're working on drawing in this little guy. I'm shading in the character's details. You'll notice, of course, I am working in black and white here at first, grayscale. And the reason that I do that is because, well, a few things, but it removes color choice fatigue. The more decisions you have to make, sometimes the harder art gets. And if I'm only working in grayscale, I don't have to worry about that. The next thing I did was use blending mode. Now I use Pixsquare with my pixel art, but also Sprite has blending modes. A lot of apps do. And the colorize goes through and of course adds color to whatever you're drawing. Now these colors that I've got right here are too saturated. Looking at Ryu, his character uses extremely low saturated colors. All right, so that's some fun stuff, right? He's got low saturated colors now. He is from that top down angle, which you can especially tell like on his shell. You see how I added these little curves here? Little stuff like that helps you understand that you are looking at the characters from slightly above. But can he fish? Yeah. Literally, of course, all I did was take the fish from the reuse sprite earlier and I recolored the hands, but I also moved his eyes up 1 pixel, added a little mouth, and that helps him to look like he is kind of looking up at you like he got his little fish. It's fun. All right, we put it off long enough. Now we gotta make a new character, okay? I want this character to look like he belongs in the Breath of Fire 4 universe. I wanna make sure that he is a human, because I gotta figure out how to do that here. And I want him to be a cyberpunk and a fisherman. So I'm sketching him in. I do not have a plan here, just some general ideas for what he might look like. I consider giving him an eye patch for a while. It's a little too piratey, so that does not stick. But then I, went ahead and started filling in those outlines. But the thing is, this is a bad silhouette right now. Silhouette is very important to be able to glance at a screen and know what that character is and who the character is and all that. I don't like this pointy, jaggy, too much stuff. That's the first thing I'm gonna do, is try to fix that. Refining that silhouette, redrawing it. That big long trench coat had to go. So I shortened the jacket, and instead, to get that fisherman vibe across, I gave him a life vest. Doesn't look like one just yet, it will. Now, I'm not totally sold on this design just yet, but I decided I'd go ahead and start shading and see if the inspiration would hit me while I did that. I really like these little buckles on his vest and his hat, that kind of helps sell that fisherman sort of idea of him. Of course, I gave him those ears back and started going ahead and colorizing this character. What you'll see right here is this character's design does not really work, right? And that is really all just because of the power of colors. Because the question is this a bad character design? I mean, looking at it right now, I think, yeah, that sucks, right? But you can solve it by just recoloring. This one is way better. He's like, oh, look, it's a cool cyberpunk dude, versus this weirdo. Now let's learn 3/4 angles, because I've actually never done that before. What I decided to do was to add in guidelines first in order to tell me what I was doing, right? This right here, top of the head, chin, hand, foot, crotch. You'll see that the feet are very far apart and the hands are very far apart. And the way that I did it is I have 7 pixels. If you count the bottom foot and the far foot, there's 7 pixels between the two, and there's 8 pixels between the two on the hands. This is actually what they did consistently with the Breath of Fire characters. So now I'm sketching the character in, and it's way easier having these guidelines in place. In fact, I might have even added more guidelines for like maybe the back of the foot and that kind of thing. But, this works for what I was doing and just kind of figuring things out. Now I'm inking over my sketch. Kind of looks pretty good at the start. But as I start to fill in the colors right here, it looks bad for a pretty good little bit. So you do have to trust the process, which I know that's not really the best advice ever, but I don't know if the best advice ever exists. Sometimes you just have to keep filling it out until you know what looks good and what doesn't, right? And give yourself time. This took hours for me to draw, and that's just part of it. Now, of course, a lot of my time was just spent making little adjustments, trying to figure out what goes where. But then finally, we've got our guy, who I've decided is named Fisher Z, but it's spelled, like he's from the future. But can he fish? Yeah. He can fish. I went ahead and made this one. It was a simple edit, did not take long, but we need to test him out to know if he really looks good. In Breath of Fire 4, they actually use 3D environments, right? I don't know how to do that. So what I did was I actually went to a website called Unsplash. This is just a website you can use to get stock photos. There's a lot of free pictures and stuff on there. You can use stuff like this as long as you're giving credit and not pretending that you drew this from scratch or whatever. So first I'm resizing that background to fit under my character, just shrinking it and kind of scooting it all around. Next up is a perspective warp. This tool allows you to, change the perspective. So I've made it look less like an overhead picture and more like it's on an isometric plane. I went in and I added a shadow under him. Because I am using like an actual photo, I felt like it was a little too realistic still. So I did something called index mode, which is where you go in and you tell it essentially to limit the number of colors in the palette. You can see right here, I'm using 150 colors at the moment for this one. That makes it look a little more pixely, a little more grainy, a little more old school, a little more rock and roll. Gave them both fishing lines, Added in some little ripples, which I just drew in, you know, some little circles here. And then I also reduced the opacity, makes it look, you know, like it's actually on the water. Hey, look at that. We've got a pretty good little picture here. But is it missing something? Or is it missing someone? Yeah, let's go ahead and put Lakitu in there. Why wouldn't we? You know, it's a fun time. I cannot help myself when I get an idea. I wasn't really even gonna do this, but I got the idea. So, drew in Lakitu, all the same stuff as before, you know, just using every technique I've learned here. I like how his little eyeballs turned out. I could have just left, you know, big old rectangles there, or if you go in and just add in, you know, some little light pixels on the edges, some little highlights on the eyes, and all of a sudden he's a nice, happy, friendly cloud. And that's it. All of our dudes in their happy little world. This video is part of an ongoing series where we go through and explore the styles of existing video games. It's a lot of fun. Last time around we explored the styles of Sonic the Hedgehog with all the bright colors and silly characters. If that sounds like something you're interested in, check out this video right over here and follow along for more pixel practice. Requested that we do a pixel art style I need to smile. Hey! So what we're gonna do in this video is make Breath of Fire 4 styled sprites with a Fisherman. What?